Welcome to Fire Your Hiring Habits with John Mitchell. This is the place where we dive into the world of talent acquisition, explore the challenges of today's workplace, and discover what it takes to build a thriving and successful organization.
My guest this week is Wendy Sellers, who is also known as the HR Lady. Wendy is a speaker, trainer, and consultant renowned for her authentic, transparent approach to helping organizations create thriving cultures. Her straightforward, no-nonsense style keeps it real without sugarcoating, challenging leaders to act and achieving lasting success through their people. Recognized as a most inclusive HR influencer, Wendy brings valuable insights on attracting and retaining top talent, effective leadership practices, and navigating employment engagement. Wendy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. That was a mouthful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we got to get it all in there. Our alphabet soup. Blah, 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 blah. So your vision, as I understand it, is to help leaders create successful companies from which employees do not desperately want a vacation from. So let's start talking about kind of the key piece. And this is a topic, near and dear to my heart as well, which is organizational culture. Let's start off initially. What role does organizational culture play in attracting and retaining top talent?
Well, thank you for asking. These days, 2024 and beyond, and it's been like this for quite some time, people can get access to information about pretty much any company online. And so even if you are having like a fake company culture out on your website, there's information for everybody, employees and candidates, on all these hidden websites and clear as day websites that say, their website says this about their culture, but once you go through those doors, don't go in. That old saying about a culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? You can have a great plan. You could even have decent compensation and benefits, but the culture is what really keeps people there. And the culture is everything from the person who's greeting you at the front door, if there's an in-person, office, to, of course, your manager and the executive suite. It's just everything. I worked in a company for a very short period of time that had the worst culture I've ever experienced in my entire life. And after that, I became a consultant, and I said, I don't want anyone to ever have to deal with this, not on the employee side, not on the management side, and not on the business owner side. And if you're a business owner that doesn't care about your culture, then I'm not going to work with you, and because you're going to go belly up soon anyways. And you're definitely probably going to be on the news in some employment lawsuits.
That's funny. So culture is critical to, keeping the best people and wanting them to be there, not wanting to, as you say, I love that, desperately wanting a vacation from going to work. So how do leaders assess or understand what their current culture really is? I mean, I'm the CEO of a trade association. We work with, literally thousands of other companies across the globe. And leaders, you think but there's, what the information you get as a leader, and then there's what the real story is. How do leaders really assess or understand what their current culture is?
Well, it's really difficult. You ask, and then they tell you. It's really not that complicated. Well, it depends how you ask them, So I would say, ask your employees what they want, what their concerns are, what the challenges are, and then shut up and listen. So ask them and then actually listen, and then go above the next step of like, okay, analyze. What can we do differently? Is this a quick fix? Is this not? Is this a one manager problem, or is all of our managers having these issues, or all of our employees having these issues? So it's really, I joke where I say it's not that complicated, because it is. Humans are complicated. If you ask somebody on a day that they just happen to step in a puddle, how things are going, you might not get the realistic information. You're just getting it from their one-off bad day. I'd rather assume in any kind of survey or feedback session, whether it's verbal, whether it's a note slipped into a box in the office, or an actual online legit valid and reliable survey, I would rather you assume the information that this person or set of people are giving us is accurate. Let's prove otherwise. Versus now that they don't understand. Well, maybe they don't understand. That's a whole other problem, because your communication isn't great. And so we tend to blame employees, and then after that, we blame managers. And don't get me wrong, that you could have bad employees and you could have bad managers, But if you have bad managers, it's because you hired them and you didn't train them the way you want them to manage.
Or
And
you kept them
so,
around in spite of it.
right, you kept them around. Well, we got the feedback that this manager or this director is the worst person in the face of the earth, but we're going to keep them anyways. I was like, no, no, no. How about you try to fix them, and then you at the same time give them the notice that says, we're going to help you, and if you don't approve, here's your walking papers.
As you talk about, honoring the feedback that people give you and take it, at face value and say, this is real. The phrase, perception determines reality. It is their reality if they're sharing it with you. Maybe that moment's reality, it could just be that person's reality, but it might also be everybody's reality, and you really need to be paying attention. So I love that. So if we're talking to leaders, as leaders are listening in and they're saying, so I'm pretty sure my culture must be okay. What are some common signs that they might look for that might represent some toxic or unhealthy workplace culture indicators? Are there some things that we can look for just before say, oh, we ought to dive into this, instead of, saying all is well?
Yeah, there's a lot. And again, it does get complicated because there's never an easy one. Oh, look at your turnover rates and now go and blame the managers. It's like, no, that's not necessarily the case, because turnover could be because a competitor just moved in town and they're offering work from home and you're not. So, okay, can we fix that? Compensation is always an issue. It could also be you're in an industry that's kind of going away, and so people are bailing because there's an opportunity to get a skill somewhere else through, government resource or something like that. But the biggest thing that I look at is turnover, especially voluntary turnover, and then are you having a hard time filling roles? If you're putting a job ad out there and nobody's applying or close to nobody, then it could be something's going on. Either your culture's bad and everybody knows about it in the area, or your pay's awful and there's nobody applying because other people could apply elsewhere, or you're mandating that that it's in-person work when all your competitors are saying remote. So it's not like one thing. It's not compensation. It's not benefits. It's not management. It's not ownership. It's not in person. It's not, remote. Hey, some people want to work in person to get away from their families or just because their personality is like, hey, I work better in person. So there's a lot. What I would recommend anybody doing, first of all, do an employee survey and make sure that it's a valid and reliable survey. Make sure that it's confidential. Make sure, I would advise you to get a third party involved, somebody like myself or another individual like myself or company, so that the information is looked at confidentially and it's not released to the executive suite that says, here's all the raw data. Guess who said what? And no, those people will never complete a survey for you ever again. They're going to already become more disengaged the minute that information comes out that their private thoughts were given to somebody that you said they weren't going to be given to. But I love working with committees. Put a committee together of people that just walked in the door, somebody who's at the lowest level of the org chart, at the maybe not the highest level. I usually try to kick the executives out. Why? Because they're scary. I mean, just face it, they're scary, and sometimes even HR too. But really talking to your employees about what the other employees said in a confidential setting to say, is this what everybody's feeling? Feel safe to speak up, and we want to change it. And how are we going to do that? If you don't say, thank you for that feedback and we're going to change it, and can you be part of that change, then you're just going to you're going to continue having disengaged people who are still there taking a paycheck because either they haven't quit or you haven't fired them yet.
And those are not the people you want. You don't want to engender that kind of attitude because you're just ineffective totally on every level. It just doesn't work.
If you're asking people for their feedback, again, listen to it, analyze it, and fix what needs to be fixed. Some things might take years to fix, right? Where other things could be, well, wow, that's an easy fix. Let's implement that next month and announce it today. And people will be like, wow, they listened to us for once. Okay, I'm a little bit more engaged now going back to work on Monday. Not fully, but I'm getting there because they asked me for my feedback.
They saw something happen. When I first came into this organization, it's one of the things you do is that you're trying to assess the culture. What is it? What should it be, et cetera? And you're listening, talking to people. And I made some fairly sweeping changes that I thought were amazingly beneficial to everybody. And don't get me wrong, they appreciate them. They were expensive changes. But the one that I feel like I heard about the most was when I put a gourmet coffee machine in the break room where they could, and we stocked it. They were like, "Oh, this is I mean, you hear about that every day." And it was like, "Oh, that's interesting. That cost me almost nothing." And all these big changes that were costing, thousands and thousands of dollars, you're like, and I talked to him later, like, no, that does make a difference. We just don't talk about it, but so big and little changes can really, help as things, as
Yeah.
you are crafting or striving to craft a culture that you desire in your workplace. So let me ask a little bit about that. So let's say, you want this wonderful culture, whatever culture you're striving for in your company. How do you balance maintaining, say, some of the core elements of culture while adapting to changing workforce needs or expectations?
It's difficult, and it depends on the size of your company too. Like, are you in one location or you have many locations across the globe? The more people you have, first of all, everything gets a little more complicated. The more locations you have, things get complicated. Why? Because different locations get their own mini culture, right? So you have to do management training for everybody in your organization who's a manager, even if they've been a manager for 30 years. Maybe you're not training them on the basics. You're training these other folks over here on the basics, but you're training them on, hey, we're making changes in this organization, and managers sorry, managers, but you're the one that's going to be leading the battle. And that's the other thing too that I've seen, I'll just say the past decade, but definitely more since the COVID pandemic, is we've been wanting management training forever. Since the time I actually walked into, HR, everybody's been asking for management training. When you have a budget cut, what's the first thing that goes? Management training, right? And then we're like, gee, I don't know why my managers don't follow my policies and procedures, or I don't know why they're just as disgruntled as everybody else. I pay them more. It's not about money. I want to get things done and I want to help my employees. So folks that are listening, please stop taking away management training. And then stop assuming just because somebody has been in your industry or a manager for 30 years that they're going to be an ideal manager for you. You have to interview and then review and give feedback and training specific to the culture aspects that you want in your organization. I focus a lot on company values. I have several books that I've written, and one of my books actually goes ahead and gives a step-by-step of how to create company values or dust them off. I often will talk to companies who possibly want to hire me. I'm like, do you have a set of company values? They're like, yeah. What is it? Like, well, if you don't know what it is, how do you think, do you think the employees know what they are, or the managers? You could be using those company values. They're usually behavioral words. You could be using them to coach people on how their behavior is not in accordance with the company culture and the company values. I even put the company values in all of my clients' job description, because 9 out of 10 times when my phone's ringing as an HR consultant, it's not to be like, hey, things are going well. It's usually, hey, I have an employee who's acting a fool and I don't know what to do. And I go, what's your company values? It looks like they're violating them. Did you do training on that? No. Did you put it in the handbook? Well, yeah, I guess. Okay, that's a start. Let's really talk about that and say, this is what we expect in our workplace, and this is how we're going to help you get there, behavior wise and performance wise.
I couldn't agree more on the values front. I like the idea of putting the values right in the job description. It's like, this is how we behave here. This is what we think about. As I think about the, changing workforce needs and expectations. So with the pandemic, so in our organization, we've been hybrid for 8 years. So the pandemic was like a big yawn to us. We're like, yeah, we do that all the time. Not a big deal.
That's
But
awesome.
for a lot of people, they were shoved into it overnight and didn't know how to deal with it. And so everybody became a virtual organization kind of overnight, running remotely. And then now we're seeing a lot of companies doing kind of a flip-flop, saying, oh no, we're not going to do that anymore. Come back to work. And if you don't come, you've lost your job. So with these kinds of changing, sometimes they're not necessarily needs, but they're, what's the danger of a company doing these dramatic shifts of the expectations of workers?
Well, the biggest danger is if they're putting down their foot to say, come in and you're not going to work here. I mean, I just hope they're ready for their recruiting budget and, everything else, their severance budget and possibly unemployment and you name it, depending on what state you're in and all of that, disability claims. if it's taken them 3-4 years to figure out that, oh, remote work's not for us, where have they been for 4 years? What has been going on?
Yeah. I mean, part of my belief is, so we were fortunate. We did it and we took our time to do it and we planned it. We sorted it out. We did internal company meetings and cross-functional groups and how are we changing this and do all that. And so it went relatively smoothly and we've been doing it for a while. Whereas if you had to do it, it was March 2020 and it was like, oh, I can't go to the office anymore. Now what do I do? Oh, we're going to try to cram whatever system we can to do it. It wasn't quite as planful. So part of my belief anyway is that companies that are going back to forcing people to come in the office are doing it for, I'm sure, a couple of reasons, but they didn't planfully do it in the first place. They didn't, look or take the, yes, you didn't have the time then, but take the time. You should have taken the time later to sit there and go, okay, what's the best way that we can do this?
Yeah. What were they doing the rest of 2020? Or, okay, I'll give them forgiveness on 2020 because
2020 was hard.
Yeah. But 21, 22, 23, now you're making a decision. It's my belief is that they're making that decision for other reasons to appease their shareholders. Because
I agree with you 100% on that. I think that it's like, oh, this is, if I mandate this, I don't have to look bad for my cuts. That's them choosing to leave.
Yep, exactly. And unfortunately, the people that are going to leave voluntarily are going to be their top talent because they're the ones that are going to get hired by other employers.
Oh yeah,
right?
They've just got a lot more flexibility. They can go wherever they want, and that's the scary part of it. Because if you make exceptions,
you're forcing them to come back, knowing that you're going to lose people. Knowing, or at least you should know, that the people that are remaining are not going to be your A players. I don't think that's going to appease your shareholders in the end, but that's a whole other conversation. Yes, I agree with you. They should have planned it out. But a lot of this also comes down to communication or lack of communication and the lack of training of managers. We shoved managers into roles. Oh, you've been here for a while. Here, you want some couple extra bucks an hour or a year? Become a manager. And then we just say, you'll figure it out. Well, they're not going to figure it out because being a manager is freaking hard. It's harder than it's ever been. And it's not something anybody should be taking lightly. And I have to say, a lot of the younger generations, and I'll just say Gen Z, Gen Y and Gen Z, a lot of those individuals that are professional, they're working in careers, they're looking for the next step in their career. When they're getting offered management positions, many of them are saying, no, thank you. No, thank you. I don't even want that $5,000 raise for that. You're giving me 10. I don't care. I don't want it. And I kind of chuckle and giggle when my friends tell me that. I'm like, good for you, because it is hard and it's a lot of responsibilities. And if you love what you're doing now, you're not going to love the next step.
It's a different world. Yeah.
But if you do think you're going to love management, then when you accept that job, you demand training.
Get the training.
You demand coaching. You demand resources, and you make sure, hey, here are my requirements. And if you don't help me as a manager, then I can't help the employees, and we're all going to fail. So I kind of think that's one good thing that came out of the pandemic is many companies who have been pushing off management training forever, or even just employee training, had no choice. They said, I have to do it or I can't retain my employees because everybody else will steal my employees. And they're offering those employees trainings at a different company. So that's the biggest thing that I've seen that came out of the past few years, and still seeing it now. I do a lot of management training and I am very, very busy.
Gotcha. And I want to shift our discussion to hiring practices, but we'll have to pause here for now. On our next episode of Fire Your Hiring Habits, we'll continue our conversation with Wendy Sellers, speaker, trainer, and consultant, also known as the HR Lady. Wendy will share best practices for effectively interviewing candidates.
Ask questions related to the job description. I literally dump the job description into an Excel sheet and make it a scorecard. And then I use that for reviews too. So no crazy interview forms, no crazy review and feedback forms. Just use the job description. Why are we asking somebody what their favorite color is? What does that have to do with this job? Nothing, absolutely nothing.
This has been Fire Your Hiring Habits. If you want to empower your organization to reach new heights, go to johnwmitchell.com to find the techniques and tools you need to attract and retain the best team and boldly reimagine your workplace. Fire Your Hiring Habits with John Mitchell is a production of Forbes Books.